Okay, we're going to start the meeting. We are being videotaped, we just discovered. Thank you all for coming. This is our annual meeting for the CPA. I'm going to do some other business and then we'll get to the public hearings. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of 2/26 and 3/21, please?
I'll make a motion.
Who wants the second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I am going to ask anyone who has an interest in the CPA to speak if you are involved with one of the groups that normally ask the CPA for funding. But if there's anybody else here who would like to speak, now is the time. In other words, there's going to be another we're going to have a public hearing on the CPA in which I'll call everybody up anyway, so it's kind of everything. All right. Account balances and open projects, communication, anything, Jamie? Nothing new?
No, in the account balances, I put up the earmarks that we had talked about, so you'll see it shown
Yeah, I
a
don't
little
know if
bit.
that's going to fly with the auditors.
This is just for CPA, like the committees.
I know.
This has nothing to do with
The budget?
the budget. This is
Okay.
just what the committee has talked about putting money aside for. So in a location where everyone can see it.
Where did you put that?
So under each of the reserves, you can see
Oh,
there's...
I have to look at the budget?
No, under the account balance handout.
This one?
Yeah. So you can see that under reserve for open space, it says
Oh, second floor.
earmark Mount Tom Trailhead Park, reserve for historical preservation, and underneath that it says earmark Old Town Hall.
But
Under fund balances.
that 200,000. Oh, we have 333 in historic preservation.
Right, and then...
So, members, the 200,000 we put toward the historic town hall restoration last year was put in historic preservation. We had wanted it in a general fund so we wouldn't have to. So in case something happened, we could easily move it out and use it for something else. But once it's in historical, we can't move it. It stays in historical. So this year, we decided to earmark money, which really has no legal, if I understand it, Jamie, has no real legal definition, shall I say. But it is indicating this committee is committed to that second floor renovation. Anybody have any questions? So, we just got the budget, and I wanted to tell everybody in the room that our match next year, if we don't finally get a new match from the state, if they don't increase the funding and the fees, which came out of House Ways and Means to try and get us to 50%, will only be 11%. And you can see a graph that the mayor put in under CPA. It shows that match going down, 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 down. My concern for that, unfortunately, is if we're going to bond $3 million for the old town hall or anything like that, major projects, without that match being increased, it makes it very difficult because we have to balance that against other projects which are worthy, such as open space and preservation. So, if you want to write Senator Hummerson, because that's now in the Senate's, and then get Councilor Carey. I got to stop saying that. I talked to Dan Carey the other day. He says he thinks it's going to be fine in the House when they approve the final version of the budget this week. Then it goes to the Senate. So we really have to push for it because it hasn't been changed since the CPA was initiated in 2000. We have never had the funding change. So anybody, if we write to the senator, write to anybody you think of, we need that money or it's going to be difficult in the future. That match will be very helpful. We have, I think, the budget said something like, what was it, $500,000 we were gonna get from the local receipts, Jamie?
Approximately the.
I think it's something like that. So if we got a 50% match, we get 250,000. 11%, you do the math, it's a lot less than 250,000, so it would be helpful. Okay. The purpose of this meeting is for everybody who definitely uses the CPA to come to the podium and let us know what they think their future requests may be for the CPA and where you're going, for open space, for recreation, for affordable housing, for historic preservation, any of these areas. We'd like to hear it because then we have to update the plan. Who wants to go first? Michael, very good.
Okay. Hi, Mike Tausnick. I'm here representing City Space and myself, but I'll start with City Space. We are on track with the projects that you're aware of. The survey work that you've agreed to fund has been completed. We don't have the results of that yet, but I think that's
Is that for the facade?
Facade, I'm sorry,
Okay,
the
yeah.
facade project. And so that work has been completed. We're waiting for the consultants to get the report to us and some estimates on what that might cost. And I think Burns is planning on updating you at your next regular meeting, if I understand the timing is correct. I've been appointed as City Space's building manager, and so I want to let you know that we have some issues with the roof.
Great.
And so that roof was installed in 2001, and we did some repair work on it in 2007. And I was doing a kind of a comprehensive review of the building a couple of weeks ago and noticed some more slate on the ground. And so we were getting estimates from 2 contractors to get a sense as to what it might entail. It looks like it's going to be $15,000 to $20,000. Slate roofs, if you have one, you know that they do need kind of routine maintenance. The snow and ice that forms on them and then decides to slide off really quickly can do some damage. It looks like there's about 40 slates that have been damaged. That location, the real problem with that location is access to the south side, to the left side of the building. There really is no way to get a big lift in there. And so the last time we had it serviced, they actually worked off of a crane. And I suspect that's going to be the case this time as well.
Is this a section of the roof that wasn't repaired the last time? In other words, when we did the repair in 2000, we did the whole roof, right?
In 2001, the entire building was staged. The roof on both towers were completed, and the entire main roof of the building. So this is just maintenance on that main roof. The towers, I mean, we didn't get up to it, but we've gotten some pretty good looks with binoculars and the like. The tower roofs look like they're okay. But the main roof, like I said, there's about 40 slate, best we can count at this point, that are going to need to be repaired. Few are cracked, many are missing. There's an underlayment, so there's no water leakage into the building at this point because the underlayment is protecting that, but you know, that will eventually not be the case, and so we do need to do the repair work. So that's something a bit new for that building. And we are beginning the capital campaign. We're seeking a chairman for the capital campaign committee at this point. So if you know anyone who is good at asking for money, we're interested in having a conversation. But that hopefully will begin in earnest in May or early June, and we are still hoping for construction in 21, 22. But I don't have any more to give you on that one. Beyond that, everything looks like it's fairly stable in the building. I didn't notice any other significant needs. You know, the heating system is old, but that major project that we're proposing will replace the heating system, and any of the other kind of worn parts of the building will be upgraded then. So I don't see anything else beyond that.
The facade, the money we gave you was for a architectural survey, so that will require a some significant funding when they,
Yeah, and I think we estimated that at around 200, something up to 200,000 when we did some preliminary review of it. But the results of this survey work that we're having done now should give us a better cost estimate. And the kind of materials we need to be able to put it out to bid.
the roof, your estimate of 20K, is that your,
So I have one estimate back, that's at 15.3, and I'm waiting for the second.
okay, so you had someone estimate, it wasn't your own?
Yeah, JD Rivet has given us a response. We're waiting for a response from Mahan out of Agawam, and they are the two contractors that I'm very familiar with that are good with slate. And we'll have some sense of it once we get the second pricing. But
Okay, thank you.
the other hat, I just wanted to lend a bit of support for open space preservation. I have a parcel of property that I am going to, in the next couple of years, try to put under some permanent preservation. It's in the recharge area. It sits at a dividing line between the White Brook and the Broad Brook watersheds. It's the last piece of open space out in the southern part of town. If you were at Tavern on the Hill, you looked down and saw this large kind of triangular shaped piece of open property. That's it. And so that, I haven't had a chance to talk to Jeff yet, but at some point I'm going to look to put some sort of permanent restriction on that property so that it doesn't end up going to development should I not be here.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Who wants to go next? Oh. Sorry, she beat you to the punch.
Sorry. I'm Janet Tatro. I'm here for the Easthampton Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. I live at 52 Pomeroy Street. I mostly am here just to say thank you to the CPA committee for your continued support of affordable housing. We did just come to you for the support for the capital needs assessment that we're going to do with SMOC on these 5 single-room occupancy properties in Easthampton, including the town lodging house. So that's underway. Jamie has the draft RFP that we are going to send out. So other than that, I don't have any other major CPA requests on the horizon. Certainly if an affordable housing project came to town, we would be talking with them about potential CPA support or other support. Our other priorities haven't drastically changed, I think, from the last plan. We still have quite a few things that we're working on, but nothing major that will be coming back to you for in the near future. Certainly the capital needs plan could, or hopefully will show us what some of these needs are at some of these properties, and then we'll have to have some conversation with SMOC about what the options are for addressing these, and certainly that could mean coming back to CPA, but we're really early in that stage, so I don't have anything really that we're thinking of.
Have you guys had any conversation about surplus school buildings and affordable housing there?
The Housing Partnership has had some very, sort of small conversations, nothing formal. I think we are excited to be a part of whatever plan the city is going to have for visioning for those properties. Certainly I would love to see some affordable housing at some of those properties. Recognize, and with the Housing Partnership recognizes that, they're older properties. So this, converting them to housing is obviously a big undertaking. And, but yes, I mean, we would certainly be really interested. Haley Wood from the Housing Partnership is here with me tonight too. And so we would certainly would hope to be at the table when the city is at a place to start talking about that.
Okay. I'd
Thank
like
you.
you to be there.
Thank you. Thank
very
you.
much. You have to wait. This young lady was ahead of you.
I'm Barbara Walvard. I'm a resident of the Lathrop Retirement Community and the chair of the Land Conservation Committee, which has 36 members and works very hard to preserve our land. You know that we have 175 acres on our campus there. It straddles Northampton and Easthampton, with the major portion of it being in the town of Easthampton. Lathrop is about to put 75 acres of its Easthampton portion into CR. And that's moving forward. Informal conversations have been happening. When we do that, we're going to come to you for this. Because that 75 acres is extraordinarily important. It connects on the north, the west, and the south to other conserved land. It has wood turtles, which is a species of special concern in Massachusetts. It has 6 vernal pools, a disappearing habitat, including all the creatures that can only live in vernal pools. It has prime woodcock habitat, which is also a disappearing type of habitat that is of concern to conservationists. We have woodcocks in our habitat also. And we have a wonderful mix of meadows, wetlands, streams, Bassett Brook, which crosses across our property, and forested upland woods. So this land is extraordinarily valuable. It's a wildlife corridor. It sits over the Barnes Aquifer. It is a core habitat, and it is one of the priority areas that connects to Park Hill for both the city of Northampton and Easthampton. But this land is considerably under threat. 6 years ago, when we began to analyze what was on our land, we found that there was much beautiful and much healthy and much good, but that there were a lot of invasive plants coming in. This is a problem because scientific studies have shown that if you compare a woods with native plants and a woods invaded by multiflora rose and oriental bittersweet and Japanese whatever, all those bad things, you can have between 7 times and 35 times more insect biomass in the native plant area than in the invaded. And since virtually all terrestrial birds need insects to raise their young, and the wood frogs that live in our 6 vernal pools eat insects when they live on the land during the summertime, this is a cascading effect on wildlife. So what we're trying to do at Lathrop is to protect our land as a land that is native, a native environment that is healthy for our wildlife. And we've already made a lot of progress. So we have 75 acres that's going to go into CR. We've cleared invasives from about 30 of those acres. We've gotten 6 small grants, 3,000 to 5,000 apiece, over 6 years. We've put in more than 2,000 volunteer hours by more than 20 residents. And we have hired, raised money among our residents to hire consultants and contractors to do the work for us in the wetlands and the heavy work and the work that requires certification. What we want to do when we get the 75 acres into CR is to take the big leap forward and do the other 45 acres. Because we can't get to them. We have a humongous effort going, but we've got 30 acres cleared. That leaves 45 acres. They're getting worse as we speak because those invasives take over and take over and take over, do more and more damage, harder and harder to reclaim. So that's what we're going to ask for. The other 45, I guess that's what we'll call the grant application, the other 45. It's not an unending task. It goes on, but it's not unending. Those 30 acres, most of them are now to the point where it's very rare to see an invasive plant in there, and residents can come through and monitor and clip the little stuff that comes up. That's what we want to do. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions?
Just make sure you go through Jeff and Jamie when you're ready for the application.
Absolutely.
Marty Klein, 7 Stone Path Lane, representing Pascoma Conservation Trust. First of all, I want to express our gratitude and appreciation to the committee for your years of supporting our work and enabling us to do the important work that we do here in Easthampton on behalf of open space. You'll be happy to know we don't have any big requests coming up. Actually, you like giving out money, so I know you don't care about that. We may put in a small request at some point for some invasive plant control on one or two of our properties, but at this point, there's no big project in the hopper that we anticipate asking you for funding.
There's some professionals at Lathrop that can help you out.
I can see that, yeah. And I also wanted to mention that I'm just finishing up a draft letter to Senator Humason on behalf of the board, which I'll be sending off tomorrow, urging him to support the increase in CPA funding, and also reminding him that late last year, Governor Baker was quoted as saying that it's time for a change, it's time to support this increase and get more funding for it. So given that Humason is a Republican and the governor is a Republican, hopefully that will add a little bit of fuel to it, and hopefully that will get passed. So
The governor made a campaign promise to fund it, and we're gonna
Yeah.
make him stick to his words.
yeah, he said it's been far too long,
Right.
and it's time for a change. So let's hope that that goes through. That would be great.
You and me too.
So thanks again from us to you.
Thank you. Mr. Mason.
John Mason, Easthampton Parks and Recreation. On behalf of our department, we definitely want to thank the CPA for what they've done through the years. Going back to Millside Park, the boardwalk, soccer, Section 3 baseball, softball hub, bleachers and benches last year that we're finishing up this year. We have the pickleball design and Stonehouse bathroom rehab project in the works right now with you folks and the city council. So hopefully we can get those projects, at least the designs, and get cost estimates done so we know what we're looking at moving forward. You know, as always, we've always tried to match or at least get some funding towards CPA projects, so we're not you know, trying to look for 100% from the CPA. We understand that this money is important for all the groups and everybody that's in the community, so we do our best to try to extend those dollars around. And we will, you know, reach out to our legislators as well and have them continue to support it, because it's good for the community, for everybody, with all these projects that get done with the help of the CPA. So, thank you.
How's our pool doing, John?
Oh, the pool's fantastic. You should go in there now. It's got a good dip in.
Seriously.
It's.
We're looking at some major renovation, aren't we?
Yeah, we keep plugging along. Thank God for George. He, you know, and last year DPW came down to help us. You know, we have to replace the decking and things like that. But and they've ran cameras in there to make sure our pipes are still good, and so DPW's helped us a lot to make sure. We had a great season last year with the pool, minimal on the leaks, and you know, we put money and time into it every year to keep it together. At some day the bill's going to come due, but I don't think we're quite there yet. Hopefully, but weather pending. Mother Nature has its
Okay.
own course of action for it. So.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? All right. Thank you.
Jeff?
Good evening. I'm Jeff Bagg. I'm the city planner here, and I'm going to follow in the parade of thank yous. But in my relatively short time here, I've really seen that the CPA has been willing to look at creative projects and has offered the planning department on some of our more creative projects some flexibility and a little bit of aggressiveness, which actually has served us very well in seeking other grant funding. So one of the things that has happened a lot this past year, I think Chairman Rist says, kind of describes it as seed money, but the ability to come to CPA for matching funds has enabled us to at least make applications, and in some cases we were awarded grants. What the state has been showing us is that they like to see communities with skin in the game, and that's not a flippant term. I think that they can see the use of CPA dollars being matched against their state funding programs and can appreciate that Easthampton is using this as a tool. So this past year it's been very successful with a couple, one big project is the East Street parcel. The CPA provided a significant match, 50%, towards the acquisition. I do want to let the committee know that there is we're partnering with Pascomic and Kestrel Land Trust to work together to preserve 23 acres. And Kestrel did apply for a conservation grant and did not get it. So they've been working on filling a small gap in funding towards the final acquisition. And
For
what we're
East
trying,
Street?
excuse me.
Is that what you're talking about, East Street?
East Street, yes.
Okay.
What is happening now is there's an attempt to try to fill that gap through fundraising, donors, or another source. And that looks promising, but there is a potential chance over the next 6 months that collectively we would come back to potentially ask for a small piece to fill the gap. The discussions that we've had is coming to CPA to close the gap or letting the fundraising happen versus coming to CPA to fill the gap and let that fundraiser bring in funds for future endowment of maintenance of this property. So we're in discussions. We have until about June to make a decision collectively whether or not to come back. So that is something that could happen in the coming months. But related to that property, the aggressiveness and flexibility was the committee was willing to provide a match we submitted a Mass Trails grant. It's a $35,000 design project. We're expecting to hear back on this application in June. That would be $35,000 towards the design of a parking area and handicapped accessible trail on the property. So my fingers are crossed that we are awarded that. We do have a plan B, which would be to do some kind of design competition. But if we are awarded that grant, it will keep significant momentum going towards that important property. So the other quick things I will just mention is that I'm not necessarily speaking on behalf of the mayor, but I know that the mayor and I have had several discussions about affordable housing and really trying to find ways to connect projects to CPA, so affordable housing projects to the CPA funds. And one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that a project developer knows that there could be some funds available through CPA to offset the cost of providing affordable units. So we're looking under every rock and stone for projects that we can bring to the city with affordable housing units. So I don't have a specific project, but there could be something that would materialize in the next year. Question to your professional staff here, Jamie, about, we didn't talk about this, but the open space and recreation plan is set to expire next year. And I don't know if CPA funds would solely fund that, or if we were seeking a state grant to pay for an open space rec plan update, whether CPA funds could be used as a match. But that's something that's on the list.
Is that required, Jeff, that we have to update that every so many years?
Yeah.
I forget.
Yeah, so for all the park application grants or land grants, we have to have an up-to-date OSRP, which we do have. We have it for another year, but this year would be the time to prepare and plan to put that in place.
Okay. Do you know what that normally would cost?
If I threw out a number, it would be a ballpark of $35,000-$40,000 for an update. I have not received a quote or investigated that, but in my experience, those are numbers that I've seen for open space plans.
Okay.
We are about to release a study done by the Conway School regarding trails and connectivity and bikes and pedestrians, and it's really an effort that is directed at the new elementary school, so at the Whitebrook property. And that report will lay out sort of some options better pedestrian and bike access to the new school over the next couple of years. One project that I could potentially see materializing in the next year is they are going to lay out a series of options and to somehow figure out one option to bring to design. It would be a progressive, we did this 30,000 foot view. We would hone in on a potential route and look for design funds that would enable us to be ready for a potential construction grant in the next 2 years.
A bike path or trail kind of.
Something, yes.
Something that would allow for pedestrian bike access.
Yep. And so the idea, it's aggressive, it follows the aggressiveness, which would be that we did the 30,000 foot view. If we do a design and we prepare for construction, there is funds through Safe Roads to Schools, and Mass DOT's Mass Trails program offers a lot of funding for the creation of new trail connections. So the end goal would be a larger construction grant, ideally in time with the opening of that school.
Excuse me, that isn't part of the school plan? Access to the school through the school plan, that's something that would be separate?
The school plan, from what I've understood, includes a significant reworking of the entrance, Park Street in, roundabout of some sort.
Right.
So there will be pedestrian access from Park Street in.
Okay,
So
this is somewhere else.
This is off road. There's a big trail network through Williston's property and connections to Nonotuck. So the Conway School started to explore some of that.
Thank you.
The last thing is just that I think open space is a good example of we don't know the unknown, or we know the unknowns. I don't know what the right phrase is. There are a lot of parcels that have been listed for protection, and usually it's in response to some potential development proposal that will speed up a project. So there's a group that has identified a list of important properties that you could potentially always see. So it's nothing specific, but open space tends to happen rather rapidly in some cases. So,
Jeff, just because I forget, open space, if someone puts a conservation restriction on land or wants to preserve it, does that have to be purchased by the city to protect it? Do we have to own that in order to, like a Lathrop or Mike's, or we just have to,
I see a lot
there
of
has to be
shaking
a
heads
deed
no.
restriction?
Yeah, there's-
I'm just asking, I'm pretty sure it's just a deed restriction, right?
Sometimes there's cost in evaluating the property or the cost of the CR itself. I don't know. I would defer to someone else to answer that.
Okay, I was just curious, because I'd like to see this happen, but I didn't know I don't remember the process, that's my problem, so. Okay, Jamie, you just wanted to say something?
I think that if what you're asking is like, are privately held parcels eligible for CPA funding?
Or
Or,
when they do a conservation restriction, or?
right, so if we purchase a conservation restriction or purchase the land, then we have to protect it, so.
Right,
But there's nothing that precludes the CPA from doing an open space project on land that isn't owned by the city. There's a PCT owns land, and we've done recreation
Right.
projects or
And
open
they
space
own the
projects.
land.
They own the
Okay.
land, and
Right, okay.
sometimes a different group will own the CR, and the city.
and we just have to have that conservation restriction in perpetuity.
Well, it goes on the deed so that it never changes.
It never changes, they can't sell it to a developer 30 years from now or something.
Right, because of the restriction.
Okay, good.
I
thank
forgot
you.
one. The dog park. So the CPA graciously funded an exploratory study. So it was the seed money example to allow the city to explore some sites for a dog park, which will allow us to seek a $25,000 design grant. So all that, CPA already contributed something to that part. I don't expect it in this coming year, but the following year we would be potentially eligible for a construction grant through the Stanton Foundation, and so the numbers are that grant is up to $250,000, and what they look for is a 25% match. 25% match.
Told us about that.
Yeah, so probably not this year, because I think it's going to take us a while to explore sites, but that is another project that would be a potential match to match CPA funds with. But
What I've learned is that this, what I call seed money, is absolutely essential. I think John tried to do the stone building a couple years ago, and because he didn't have a design, he couldn't get grant funding, and that's the reason we have to support initial design of the dog park or of the stone building or anything like that, so that we can then pursue grants with accurate architectural estimates on the cost. So that's why I call that seed money is very important now. It seems that's absolutely necessary for almost all the projects going out there, except for maybe a open space. But even that, like East Street, didn't that require a design before you can get the grant, or what you were doing with it? As I recall,
For the trail concept on East Street would be, that's what we're applied for Mass Trails to do the design work for.
right.
I would just say that all the projects that the park department has a superior value. So using CPA to fund the projects at Nonotuck and elsewhere are huge. I mean, that's a huge value to the community. So
I know.
I think all those projects are really valuable.
I try not to place projects against competing interests. I mean, I think they're all valuable to the community.
Yes, I agree.
So
Great.
that's just my own personal thing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
So Maren Goldstein, I'm here just to add a couple different pieces with a couple different hats. So one, as school committee member, I did want to sort of follow on Jeff's statement, so it's great that I went after you actually. So May 8th, we have a event where it's the bike and walk to school event. It's something, this is going to be the second year that we're doing it. There is a lot of momentum for more and more kids to be able to use trails to get to our schools, and so the project that Jeff is working on trying to connect our schools out into the community is something that I think is really critical, and appreciate the support you guys have supported so far with it, and hope that you guys can continue to support Jeff to be able to implement that to the point that we're actually able to have all those trails that we need to be able to get kids to our schools. So thank you for doing that work. Were you gonna say that? And then, so that's school committee hat. The other hat that I have is somebody within the renewable energy industry, solar industry. I just wanted to put out there in terms of open space. I think that it is really important as you look at some of the different parcels that come up that are also on that list of desired to be protected properties. Some of these properties are wooded properties. I know that we're moving forward with one of the solar projects that's going to be cutting down some of our forests. I think that it's really important that we look to protect, and even where solar is a really important thing, cutting down forests to be able to put solar on that is not necessarily the best choice. And so being able to have funding to go forward on projects to be able to put them into protection as them, whether it's even for solar or for other means, I think is really important. And so one of the projects that I know that has gone back and forth as a possibility of coming up for to be able to be put into the protection of open space is the property of the Williston Branch Creeks Waterheads area, the Cernek property right off of South Street area. I think that, again, I know that that's gone back and forth between whether or not it's even available to be purchased, but I think it's something that we as a town really do want to help be ready to protect it as opposed to putting development on that. So I just want to put forward that I think that obviously open space is critical. You guys have done a lot of great work on that, but I think we want to continue to sort of protect those spaces as opposed to developing them. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
I'm Marge Prendergast. I live at 2 Gough Street, and I'm also the president of the Public Library Association of Easthampton. And so I'm very naive, and I'm a newbie at this. But it looks like back in 2016, we came to you for requests for things to help our building stay as strong on the outside as it is on the inside. About a year ago, we did our own repair to the bottom of the building to the tune of almost $500,000. It was about $450,000. Most of that money was because the foundation itself was getting so much water. That being repaired, we are now able to stop and start looking at other things that need to be done. And so I come to you and I ask for, and I don't have a proposal yet, I'm not even certain how to do this. What they said was go to the meeting. So I'm here.
Talk to her.
That's actually what they said. Go to the meetings, say hi to everyone, but make sure you make friends with Jamie. Jeff said that. Anyways. Just teasing. Anyways, I'm not quite certain of the process, and I will be educated, hopefully. And I just want you to understand that I realize throughout the whole community there's so many wonderful projects, and there's a lot that you guys do that are really good, and it's very supportive. I hope that you keep on the radar the library. We definitely need to do some sort of needs assessment, an official one. Kevin Perrier from 5 Star did a preview of one for us. We gave him what we had, and that's when he stopped us back in 2017, 18, something like that, and said, guys, your foundation is in trouble. So we stopped everything, and that's what we worked on. Now what we'd like to do is go back to the idea and look at repointing the bricks, and we definitely need new windows, and our lighting is not good, especially for a library.
The library is a historic building, right?
I don't think we're put on the historical register.
No.
Right, because there's a lot of restrictions when you do something like that. But it's definitely a historical building.
Is it, John, eligible?
Is it eligible?
Yes.
Well, I think it's eligible, yeah.
Okay.
It's not on there, and that's a decision you might consider, but
Okay. And that might be a path that we want to look at.
Well, I think that's the only path in order to get funding if it's historical, and I think it is.
Okay,
So you could get everything done through CPA funding with matching grants, and
okay.
you could talk to our historic preservation representative and Jamie and get applications going. I mean, one of the things that Old Town Hall did was get a design. Like the facade was falling apart, so they went and got an architect to take a look at what's gonna be needed there,
Okay.
so that then you can go for grants. So, yeah, get a survey done, and you could get funding from the CPA for a survey. No?
no, we were just saying, just to clarify, it's not a requirement that it has historic designation to be eligible for CPA funds. That's a
So it had to be on the city registry or something.
There has to be a determination from the local historic commission that it's a significant, if it's a historically significant property or structure or object.
I'm surprised, that hasn't
Which is
happened yet?
different than
Or
it
it-
being officially on the historic
Right,
register.
okay.
Or it has to be on the state register or the national register.
Then it's automatically
Right.
considered.
Is it on our local, do we have it on a local list?
It's
It isn't-
part of the historic district, but it is not individually designated historic property.
Should we do that?
I think, yes, I think so. Yeah.
Hey, I'm here to learn.
Let's do that.
How do we do that? Is that just
I defer to James.
so we'll have that conversation?
Right, and so
Okay.
it would be CPA would give you project funding in exchange for doing this, whatever it is that the committee wants, like listing.
survey.
Listing the property trying to get the property listed on the state or national register, or putting a conservation restriction on it, or something like that. It's a negotiation, but the benefit to the public benefit has to be something that the committee can say, we got this for this money, we got a preservation restriction for the money that we gave you, and then whether or not you use that money to fix the windows or do a capital needs plan or however you want to use it, that's up to your organization. Otherwise, the committee can only fund capital improvements that are, necessary and not, and that are done in the historic manner.
Okay.
But I think that might be what you're looking for, would be capital improvements for a historically significant property here in Easthampton. So I guess one thing is you have a decision to make about
Right.
whether you would want.
I think where it
want to-
stands right now, and I don't mean to interrupt us, but I think where it stands right now, it is more along the lines of capital improvement for a historical building of significance that's in our city. That's what I'm leaning towards. Because as we go and grow, that building is too small for this community as a library, and we know that. But we also know our board is charged with making sure that that historical building, whether it's listed somewhere or not, has to be kept up and not fall apart. So we're of two minds, knowing that we need to work on it, but we also need to look to the future. You brought up the school building use, the ones that are going to be open, things like that. We want to be part of that conversation because our community is growing. From the renovation and repair, we're up 40% with people using the library. That's kids, family, everybody. So we know that we're growing. We know that the community is learning through us. So I don't want to tie up your meeting with this.
No, but this is
Tell me.
important.
Tell me.
If you get the historic, listed on a registry, even nationally, that opens up the door to grant more than simply CPA. And the CPA funding, we always like to leverage grants, like
Okay.
CPA funding, and you can go out and get a grant to help you. A $500,000 bill, that's a big bill. We could have helped with that, in hindsight, if all of this was in
Well,
place.
it happened pretty fast.
I know.
He said, it's a little wet down there. We said, okay, we'll fix it.
But you
We
can
didn't have time.
You can do both, right? You can have it be the historic commission can qualify it as a historically significant property
Locally, right?
locally, and you can do that, by
Immediately.
approaching the historic commission and putting it on their agenda for consideration.
Okay.
And then, either at a later time or concurrently, go after a national or state historically significant or historic preservation kind of designation for the library, if that's what you want to do. But those two are kind of separate.
Right.
And I think more doors open up for other kinds of grants when you have the state or federal designation. But for the CPA committee, we're not restricted in dollars and assigning dollars as long as it has a historic commission designation as a historically significant property, if my understanding is correct.
Yes, but what the committee can actually fund is dependent on, like, what historic, so the historic preservation, it has to be done in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines for historic preservation. So the committee can fund, like, let's say the repointing of the bricks, because that's, the facade is the historic piece of the building. Maybe the interior has been renovated so much that the interior is no longer historic. The committee wouldn't be able to fund new lighting in the interior. But if the committee was buying a preservation restriction on the building, what you choose to do with that money once the CPA's bought the restriction is up to you. And if the library wanted to then take that money and invest it in lighting, then that's
There's
okay.
lots of paths to getting funding.
Okay. So I'm not going to tie up your time.
Talk to Jamie
Yeah.
and John.
Okay, I'm not going to tie up your time, but do know that the Public Library Association of Easthampton wants to work with the CPA. And I know you guys are going to be a huge help. And I thank you very much for listening, sir.
Wait a minute, hold on for a second.
I'm not going to.
About 3 or 4 years ago, when I was on the historical commission, we had a guy come in and he was gonna reappoint the building. Remember that, John?
Yeah, I think that's what.
And the guy said, just for your benefit, he said he would not do the bricks on the outside of the building until the windows are done first.
Right. And that's what we were all leaning towards, that, we have to do the windows, we have to repoint the building.
Right, so you do the windows first and then you do the outside of the building.
Right.
But then they found the foundation was critical.
Right.
Critical, right.
Okay,
Put us back.
well, know that I think it's a historic building, I just have to look at it, so. I could designate it in my mind right now.
Well,
I
the bathroom
appreciate
at Daily
that.
Field is historical, that's gotta be historical.
Stop.
Well, I appreciate you all
Harry.
listening, and I look forward to working with you.
Do you
Okay,
have my contact info?
I will. Thank you very much.
all right. Anybody else? The little graph on the board is pretty interesting, and I just love to look at this. Every year we look at it. How many millions of dollars we've spent on our different aspects over the years. And I imagine this is since 2000, correct, Jamie?
Yes, it goes all the way back.
Affordable housing, $1.11 million. Historic preservation, $1.33 million. Recreation, $2.04 million. And open space, $1.69 million. And that leveraged in recreation, $22 million in state funding, federal funding, $23.44 million. I don't think that was just recreation, the state. I'm reading this wrong. But obviously, we have been able to use this money, our CPA money, to get a great deal of money, multiple millions of dollars of funding since 2000. And I'd like to see the CPA continue. That's why that match is so critical, that the promise that was made to us be continued. Does anybody else have anything? Jamie? So we update this plan with what people might want to do?
Yep,
The thinking and...
Right, so we'll take the, this is the Appendix C from the preservation plan. And we'll take these lists and update them from what people talked about us today and the other emails that I've received from groups that aren't here. And then the rest of the plan will also be updated as well to include the financial, as you just read, and the projects that have been funded since the last time.
Okay. I am curious about that open space plan that we have to do by next year. We ought to move on that soon.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that to delay things like the East Street project, or if that's not in place, we can't get grants, right? As I understand it.
There are, like Jeff was saying, there are a few grants. The park grants and the land grants require you to have a current open space recreation.
Open space plan. Or whatever that is needed, I think we should move on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to look and see if that's a fundable activity.
For us, why wouldn't it be fundable? It's a plan, huh?
Because they don't, other than for housing, the CPA Act only allows like capital projects, purchase of land, big things. For housing, you can have support for affordable housing, which includes things like creation of municipal housing trusts or programs that wouldn't otherwise qualify for funding under the other categories. So that's the only one that allows that support category.
Well, we'll find out how we funded it the last time.
We did it in-house the last time.
Really?
I believe so.
Okay, well, to me, I guess the mayor's on board with these projects, so I imagine she would be okay with funding it if we can't. But I don't think this committee would have a problem funding it if we could, right?
Like I said, I'll look into it and see what
all right.
what the legislation says and what other communities have funded as well.
Okay.
And if we can always ask the city solicitor for an opinion.
All right. Anybody have anything else they want to say? Well, I guess we're adjourned. I appreciate everybody coming, and we have before the council the two things we approved last time, the pickleball building design, and we try to move on these things pretty quickly. At least I try to move them through finance, so that, because I know how long it takes, and then we have to get, government works slowly, and I'd like us not to be an impediment, us being the city council, to getting that work done so that then grants could happen, et cetera. It takes a while to get all this done. Okay, thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You seconded, Scott.
Yeah, sure.